All right. How's it going, y'all, out there in the virtual space? My name is Veronica, and I'm coming to you live from beautiful Bend, Oregon. This is the ancestral home of the Warm Spring Paiute and Wasco people. I want to give a moment to acknowledge their stewardship of the land here. And while we are all joining in, please use the chat. I'd love to hear your comments and see questions roll into the chat. It makes me feel like I'm not alone talking to a box. I know there are humans over there. So let me know where you are tuning in from, logging in from, I should say, right? This isn't the radio. All right, Houston, Texas in the house. Awesome, thank you, Josh. While we get people rolling in, I just want to give, a prompt here for people to think about, in this last year, what's one thing you've gained an appreciation for within the craft beer industry that you want to continue to amplify as we move out of this pandemic? And all right, I see Steamboat Springs, Colorado. How's it going? And while you're thinking of that, I just want to share that for me, I thought of this last night. One thing that I've always appreciated about the craft beer industry is collaboration and the sharing of ideas. So, this is a part of it. Today, sharing learnings that I've had within a brewery that, that's been around for 33 years, lots of mistakes, lots of learnings to share. So I'm happy to share today. And, we have Mexico in the house. All right, awesome. How's it going? So that's something that I want to continue to amplify in the future is our continued collaboration and sharing of good ideas. So today I'm going to be talking to you about go-to-market planning and taking things from idea to launch. So sharing a bunch of our processes in how we do this. We'll be using the Fresh Family approach. So this is a brand family that we, we've been growing for the past, wow. I mean, Fresh Squeeze has been around since around 2009. So it's been a long time coming to build where we are within the Fresh family. So we'll be using that as a platform to talk about different tools that you can take into your brewery. A little bit about myself. Veronica Maria Vega. I'm Director of Product Development at Deschutes Brewery. I've been here for about 15 years. My background is in brewing. So I was a production brewer for many years, was a head brewer at the pub where I learned how to develop recipes, engage with customers, then went back to the brewery and now work within product development, which is a collaborative effort between obviously brewing, sales and marketing, and building, great battle plans to go to market with amazing products. All right, so let's get going here. All right, I think everyone might know, where Deschutes is, but just to give you a lay of the land here, we started out in 1988 in Bend, Oregon as a pub. And this is where I work, the production brewery, which was established in 1993. We also have a pub in Portland. It opened its doors in 2008. We also have a tasting room with a small brewery in Roanoke, Virginia, which we opened up in 2017. So doors are always open for you to come visit us and say what's up. We also have a small little place in the Portland airport. So even if you can't get out of the airport, if you start flying again, hit us up at the airport. And just to kind of ground us to where we're going to talk through, with planning new products, there's just an acknowledgement that everyone's on a different road. There's small pubs that might just be, have a couple core brands and might be rolling out some one-offs. So there's so many different cycles of planning. So monthly planning, are you just going, month to month and really not seeing, too far into the future. That's okay. We've all been there. At times, even as a large brewer, it feels like we revert to month. Annual planning. Are you taking at least 1 year ahead of time to look at your portfolio and look at the releases that you want to get out into the world. This is if you start getting into the retail space, it's much more important to start thinking from an annual basis. And, you know, next level is taking it to strategic planning, where you get out of annual planning, maybe even do it not within the typical planning cycles of the craft beer industry, but you take it away and you say, what's my 5 to 10 year vision? And portfolio strategy plays a role in every single type of these cyclical planning cycles. So, you know, it's just an acknowledgement that I understand that there are people here tuning in that might be going month to month. And there are others that might be taking a more strategic approach. And my hope is that with what we talked through here, that there will hopefully be some tools that you can take into any type of planning cycle that you are in. So getting into portfolio strategy. So this might be something really obvious to say. The vision and strategy of the brewery informs portfolio strategy. But it's really interesting how quickly you can become diverted from your vision and strategy. An idea might bubble up and all of a sudden you're distracted and pulled into a different direction where you might lose sight of your vision and strategy. So this is always a really great point of grounding on, you know, if you're chasing something that isn't really within the vision and strategy of your overall company. So some things that kind of might feel a little like existential or like, you know, just bigger visionary type of questions. You know, what is your brand known for? And an even bigger one, if I can be dramatic for just a second, at the end of the world, you know, what beers do you want to be remembered for? So those types of big questions can kind of distill down where you want to be in this space, right? There's so many of us out there. How can you be distinct and what do you want to be remembered for? Within there, you know, the commercial strategy, that might be more of what you're doing month to month, year to year. You take those visionary types of questions and then see what you want to do from a commercial strategy. Your portfolio strategy has to be centered within those big questions. So if you went to business school, you probably have seen the Boston Matrix. This is a model that is to show where products in a company's portfolio may fit. I didn't mention my background, but I went to school, I have a biology degree, and then went into brewing. So, you know, I didn't go to business school. This was something that, you know, I learned along the way as I became, you know, going into product development and strategic planning. So hopefully, you know, if this is the first time you're seeing it, it's kind of a matrix where you can plot where your products live. And so the question mark there, those are products that you really, you know, that might be something great, but you just don't know. You have that feeling in your gut and you're like, okay, this might be the next best thing. So there are some products in my portfolio that are question marks. The shining stars, the ones that from the get-go, your lightning in a bottle type products that you already have a lot of consumer data. You have your customers telling you that this is what they want. Those are the shining stars in your portfolio. Then the cash cows, the brands that you have built. These are like where some of our flagships live, where you have spent a lot of time building up these brands, and now you're just cashing in on them. And they're a really, really important part of an overall portfolio, for sure. And then the dogs, right? The things that you threw out at the wall to see if they stick, and you know they didn't resonate. So in looking at all of this, I thought, well, this is kind of really like businessy. So how do I take this to my brewery when we don't really talk in this type of language all the time, right? So I created similarly like the brewer's portfolio matrix. So it's like language that we all understand, right? I mean, if anyone out there has done any fresh hop brewing, you know that staging is incredibly important. So I grabbed this picture. This is actually us brewing Chase and Freshies. But what are the products that you are staging out in the market? Things that you're testing, things that you still don't know if there's a there. What are you brewing? So things that you're actively, getting to grow your shining stars. What are you brewing? And then drinking, the things that are, putting cash in the bank, and that sort of thing. And I think every brewer gets depressed when they look at any beer dumped on the ground, but what are you dumping? The things that you really should move on quickly. So in this new thought of a brewery portfolio matrix, what are the criteria for staging? This is just low share, low data. It might be a fast growing market. So think of seltzers, 8 years ago or something. People didn't know. There was maybe an inkling, but there seemed to be some fast growth there. This could be regionally influenced. So for a brewery like our size, it is regional, but we have, we're expanding. We might need to think of this from a regional standpoint. Could be amazing, could be risky, don't know yet. Overall, initially net cash would be low, but then investment or promotion, if you had the capacity to invest and promote, it could build it, right? And then this is where obviously new innovations, new business platforms, and research lives. In brewing, this is your high market share. So you're growing sales, these are highly profitable brands, the growth stage of the PLC. So you think about this, this is IPA has been here overall, right? So a lot of breweries that are heavy into IPAs, such as Deschutes. We have a lot of products here in the brewing stage. This could be new business platforms that you're growing, that you've already seen some success, that you need to start continuing to build. And these are brands with long-term high equity potential. Within drinking, so this is the mature phase of the product life cycle. I'll bring up that here in a bit. But this is low market growth. Maybe overall, not only is the style not growing, but your brand isn't growing within that market, and sales may be declining, right? There might be less growth for this style in particular in the future, but the profit's still good. So you can't totally move away from this. This is incredibly important. Just still put focus, but maybe not a lot of energy in spin-offs or that sort of thing. So they're popular, they're highly loyal. So you have to think of your loyal customers for all the beers that you might have in this portion of your portfolio. This is a place where a product extension or a product improvement could help. This can be risky, I think, in craft beer when you have those loyal customers. People don't want to really, know that their beer is changing. So I think as long as you do this with your customer in mind and have that point of engagement of what is possible with an extension or improvement, that can be successful. And then dumping, obviously, you see declines in your core market. This is something to pay attention to. Overall, if growth in the full footprint is low, at this point, no use in investing something here, right? Your resources are going to be much better utilized in other portions of your portfolio. And in brewing, quality becomes an issue here. If you're starting to need to dump before you package in order to keep batch sizes fresh out in the market, this is huge indicator that this part of the portfolio should be dumped and dumped quickly. So as an exercise, I would say, you could do this now if you have a small portfolio, but I do recommend taking the time to kind of just make this access and plot how many products do you have in this staging phase, in this brewing phase, in drinking, and in dumping. And just by visually seeing how many products you have in all of these areas, you might get some insight on where to put some energy, right? If you have all your products in the drinking portion, that might be that in 5 years, you're going to be running into some problems. So this is a good exercise to do, I would say, at least on an annual basis, to plot where your portfolio is going. So I talked a little bit about product life cycle. This is taking those products in that Boston matrix through a portfolio or a product life cycle. So obviously your question marks are in that initial phase, introduction, you're trying to kind of testing an idea. Your shining stars are in that trajectory of growth. Your mature brands are in that like upper level. And I think I don't know, I don't want to generalize, but I could say at least for myself, our brewery at times, it is like not very fun to look at this like area of the life cycle because, you know, we're so passionate about the beers we make. We're so connected to our customers, and it's hard to think that they would move on from something that there's been a lot of love either poured in, not only on the brewing side, but all the memories that people are building with your beers and all that. So I kind of think of this as like a door on the other side of, you know, the maturity of brand. And like, you kind of don't want to open that door. You're like, what's on the other side of the door? And, you know, if you open it, it might be like this like horrible, messy closet that you just want to close the door quickly and like not deal with. But I've encouraged, you know, ourselves to look at that ugly closet, look at that place behind the door, because you have to have that vision 3 to 5 years out to ensure that you're putting things in your portfolio to layer over. So if you have lots of brands that are in that mature phase, without looking on the other side of that curve, you're missing out on the opportunity to start layering over and getting in brand extensions or new product introductions. So don't be scared of what's on the other side of the door. It happens to, you know, all products. This is a model. Of course, not all products go this exact curve, but this is a model. So we can use that to understand that decline is a part of the life cycle, but we can plan for it. So I want to shift a little bit into the Deschutes portfolio. You know, here looking at the fresh family, we brought in Squeezy Rider here in 2021. This top look at the portfolio is all cans. We've also created, you know, another portion of the portfolio that I call the lifestyle brands. And these are more of that like question mark, right? We're seeing like, okay, we're getting insights that there are folks that are wanting to take a more health and wellness approach to their life. So we're going to put some products in to see, you know, if this resonates with consumers. We also have a pretty large bottle portfolio. So within our bottle portfolio, we still have our classics, the beers that, you know, are in that more mature phase of their life cycle, but bringing back like the things that people liked about that. So bringing out some retro packaging this year. We also have, you know, Royal Fresh, our Imperial IPA, another member of the Fresh family, in bottles because, you know, we've seen some data on the fact that higher alcohol IPAs, bright IPAs still are seen at a higher value in bottles. So this is a look at the overall portfolio, seeing the mix of cans and bottles, some more mature brands, some question marks, and then some shining stars, right? The IPAs in our portfolio is really where we want to grow. And so, you know, many years ago, in strategic planning, we discussed building what we were calling the Fresh family. So taking the point of inspiration from fresh squeezed IPA, not only as, you know, a beer that is hop led, but the story is hop led. So fresh squeezed, we developed when the Citra hop, I don't know if people recall when Citra used to be an experimental variety. So we would do, and we still do, a lot of single hop experimental beers at our pubs at the time. And, you know, with this experimental variety, our brewer was like, this smells like fresh squeezed juice, so I'm going to call it Fresh Squeezed. The name was easy, it resonated. And so we're taking that point of inspiration, but then making other beers that are unique on their own right. So not really the classic line extension to where, you know, it's not like Fresh Squeezed Light or Fresh Squeezed, you know, dark sort of thing, but taking that inspiration point of not only the hop story, that point of innovation, how we want to continue to be at the forefront of new hop, experimental hop varieties, having close relationships with our growers, farmers, breeders, and taking that into different types of IPAs that are distinct. So for fresh haze, really wanted to bring out orange through hops like Mandarina Bavaria, Amarillo, and Cashmere. A little squeezy, brought a point of distinction by being gluten reduced. So we wanted to make an American pale ale with vibrant hop aroma, but still making that gluten reduced. And as I said, we introduced just recently Squeezy Rider. The story with this, again, point of, inspiration from Fresh Squeezed, is taking Strata hops. So another beautiful hop variety that was developed in the Pac Northwest by Indie Hops, has an aroma of like tropical fruit punch that is so unique, and really amplifying that story of what hops can bring uniquely to a beer with Squeezy Rider. We're testing a beer called Hazetron, working with an experimental hop variety, number 630, and bringing in some Simcoe Cryo. So, a futuristic look at what's happening in hop breeding and hop products. And then we have Royal Fresh, our Imperial 9%. So all of them within, yes, hop forward and hop led area of the portfolio where we're seeing growth, but also distinct in their own right. So just to introduce, how we do product development here, it's really in between a lot of different disciplines within the brewery, starting with strategy. So we have strategic planning every year, and that might take us into a 3 to 5 year vision. But then there's a strategy team that meets every other week. It's our executive team plus our sales leadership team, and they're involved with just ensuring that we create product calendars that fit our strategy, right? They're the ones that are bringing us back around when it's not within the vision or strategy of the brewery. Then we have the R&D team, which I'll introduce in a bit. We are just tasked with ensuring that we create the products that are fitting within that calendar and that we're on time. Logistics, that's just every single detail from naming the beer to art to getting it TTB approved. There's a team that ensures that we tick all those boxes and that we're marching towards commercialization. And that's the final team here, where this is a deeper collaboration with sales and marketing to ensure we're putting together a strong go-to-market plan with every beer we develop. So within the overall innovation process, maybe you've heard of the innovation funnel. That is like where your products are fitting within an overall process. So, you're going to have a lot of ideas, right? And I'm going to share a couple kind of processes that we've utilized to gain ideas. One of them is idea campaigns. And then within there, just having a straight process for selection. How do you narrow down all those ideas into something that could, make it through the funnel? The next phase is testing, where you're really just asking, will our customers buy this? We had this great idea, but without having a customer excited about your great idea, you really don't have anything there. So lots of ideas are cut down in the testing phase when customers actually tell you whether they like it or not. Getting into development, this is where you're totally fine-tuning the final recipe, getting the name. I'll mention a couple times here that, depending on where you are on your journey, you might need to be looking at not only the end customer, but all the customers within 3 tiers. So getting trade feedback once you have a name, a beer developed, maybe even some preliminary packaging. This starts cutting down ideas a little further as you're getting other customers in the value chain, getting input from them. Market research, really, like, nothing is better than getting that brand fully formed in the market on a small level so that you get sales numbers, you get velocity numbers, and looking at that, you could then very confidently go into a larger launch. But it doesn't end with launch. We'll talk a lot further on post-launch reviews. It's really, really important to follow this process through and ensure that you're learning from every single launch. Because obviously, you look at this, there's a lot of effort that goes into this funnel, from getting ideas to testing them. So you want to make sure that if you get to the point of launch, what did you learn along the way? And talking about where ideas come from, I mean, they come from so many different places. I talked about collaborations, just our dialogue amongst brewers, but really it's like basically it's from both ends of the bar, right? So our employees, from what they're hearing from people, from what they're seeing from others, the inspiration that they get from being a part of the industry. But most importantly, our customers either asking for something that we don't have, pulling out their wallet. So your sales numbers are really going to tell you where customers are excited. So ideas come from both ends of the bar. So in thinking of ways that you can engage your customers for how, like during the development process, this is something I've utilized in the tasting room, is just getting, there's great technology out there, right, for this, getting a QR code and having a beer on tap that you've, kind of talked through the staff on, hey, we're really interested in this idea of a passion fruit IPA. This is a real example. So we want to get some customer input on how we're doing. So this is a pilot batch. We put this QR code out there where people can just scan it with their phone. Boom, a 2-question survey comes up to their phone where we're just asking them, how would you rate the hop aroma here? And how would you rate the tropical or passion fruit flavor? Because when we're just sitting in a boardroom tasting beers together and not having that customer input, we're really, doing ourselves a disservice by not really asking customers like some of the direct questions that we're curious about. With the technology, with these answers, you can come back Monday morning and see, we had 30 people tell us within less than a minute that they didn't think the hop aroma was there. So that gives us something to go back and do some more work, and allows us to have that back and forth dialogue. A little bit more data driven than just, looking at sales numbers and talking to tasting room staff. That's super important too. I'm just saying that this is another way to get a little bit more data specific from your customers. Another way, obviously this is pre-COVID. I cannot wait to do these again because, if you got, in craft beer, we know that our employees are just so passionate about being a part of this industry and developing new beers. So people are dying to tell you what they think about the beers you're developing. So this is a look at a focus group we had, I guess about 1.5 years ago, where we had pointed questions and just had people taste through beers and answer questions like, what do you like about it? What do you not like about it? Do you like the name? Do you think it's going to be successful in the market? So you're giving them ownership of products that you're developing, and they're going to tell you honestly. So it's a really great way to get another layer of feedback. So I talked a little bit about idea campaigns. So we have suggestion boxes and those types of places where people can just throw ideas out at any point. But there are different planning cycles, as I mentioned. So I have utilized some at some points something called an idea campaign, where you're saying, okay, for 2 weeks, people, I want all the ideas that you on your bike rides, when you're out, just walking around, not at work, because that's usually where good ideas come from. Come back to work and start plotting your ideas in this spreadsheet. And we took it a step forward here, where we said we're going to have a 2-week idea generation campaign, and then we're going to have a 1-week vote up. So now employees, co-owners, as we call them, will be able to vote up ideas. And so by the time it gets to like the selection committee, they've already seen what are the most popular ideas within our employee base. You can kind of then take a more razor-like approach to ask, okay, these are the ideas everybody likes, but does it align to our strategy? Does it add something distinct to our portfolio, right? We were going back to that fresh family look. They're all IPAs, but are they distinct amongst each other in the overall portfolio? And then can we safely and profitably make it at our brewery? We never like to, put those parameters up immediately when people are throwing ideas out, but at some point you do have to ask yourself, is this possible? All right, getting into testing, you know, we are very blessed to have a pilot system. It's a 2-barrel system that can split into two 1-barrel systems. I'll show you the setup here. But, you know, we started out as a pub. So all of our testing really was right there at the pub level. And we were making 20-barrel batches and at times, you know, 30 black IPAs, you know, in order to assess whether we had a good recipe. And that takes a really, really long time. So while it took us a bit to get to commissioning this pilot brewery, we commissioned it in 2015. We still utilize our pubs as brand building centers and use the pilot brewery as like taking that, you know, X-Acto knife to your recipe and really fine tuning it. Just to give you an overview of our pilot plant design in case in the future you will be planning this. I do think it is unique to us. And the reason why we designed it in this manner is because we are a heavy IPA led portfolio. So when you think of how you're going to design your pilot brewery, a good question to ask is what kind of questions are we going to be asking within the pilot brewery? So for us, it's typically hops. So what kind of hop campaigns, what kind of hop combinations are we going to do, and yeast. So because of those are the key questions that we tend to ask in making IPAs, we decided to design our pilot brewery this way. And so you have a 2-barrel mash, lauter, and pre-run tank that then splits into a Kettle 1, Kettle 2 whirlpool cooling system into single fermenters. Because we want the same mash, we want less, you know, to lessen the number of parameters that we're testing, and we want to get to those questions of hop and yeast selection pretty quickly. So within every brew, we can answer 2 questions. You know, we brew about 200 brews per year in this manner. And just to give you a look at how that resource breakdown looks, I mean, not sure if this is surprising to you, but you know, for a pilot brewery to say that product development is only 35%, that's because we allow for 25% creative. So that means that, you know, any idea that a brewer might want to make, we allow some time for that because you never know what's going to bubble up. There's typically learnings from everything that will end up going into product development. So I don't really count it as product development unless it has like a project name and a deadline, then that's like a product development brew. Obviously looking at research. So this is, you know, when we're partnering with OSU on some malt research or partnering with our hop suppliers on that single brew for a new experimental hop. That's where research lives. And then process improvements and other, you know, we're still doing events and those sorts of things. So, you know, there's a little bit of resources allocated to that. So example is taking something like Lupomax, you know, partnering with Haas and saying, okay, if we look at Mosaic Lupomax and pair it against T90, do that split brew within the pilot, where do we match up in hop character and sensory? So we were happy to see a little bit of tick up in the hop character there, more from the comments here in sensory, getting a little bit more tropical, less onion garlic. That's the OG that you're seeing there. And so that led us in a direction to, you know, from that sensory analysis to kind of bring it from research into a creative brew, where a brewer took the learnings from that single Lupomax and then combined it with different hops. And then after that, it became a product. So it became Symphonic Chronic. This is a beer that's in our IPA variety pack. So from research, we went to a creative brew and then went into product development. Okay, a little bit further into the product development process. So we talked about testing, utilizing your pilot brewery. You know, at some point you want to get marketing involved, to talk about a name, to really start honing in on your value proposition, not only to your end customer, but if you're talking, you know, if you're going to retail, what value does this bring to your distributors, to your retailers? Getting that plan to scale, right? Like, this is a great idea, but if it's a yeast that we don't have in house, and we're going to have to, create a new process for yeast propagation, starting to get that plan to scale. The go-to-market plan I'll go into a little bit here in the near future, and then getting into launch and post-launch. So this is like super rudimentary, but I like to work in both digital and analog. So this is like a snapshot. In my office, I have like literally just Post-it notes that show me what projects are within that, that process, so that at a glance, I might be able to walk into my office and say, oh, I might have to send that email. And just by that email, like, then I can move this process forward. It's really, really like, feels good, to check a box and move something forward. So I would just say, don't underestimate small tools to kind of map out where your products are within a launch process. The development team. So, for many, many years, our development team was just brewing and, Gary, our founder, and our CEO. I have found that by bringing in quality and purchasing, especially on a hop-led portfolio, getting those conversations for contracts and that sort of thing up front, letting both quality and purchasing know what kind of questions you're asking, you're going to get a lot faster alignment towards a plan, and good energy towards the plan. You see marketing there, obviously, because he has dark rim glasses. Everyone in marketing does. It's super important to have marketing be a part of naming the whole concept, getting that sense from the brewing team, like what was the inspiration, and being able to like create the story together. So the development team has morphed into adding these other functional areas, which I have found to be super beneficial. Sorry, my presentation froze. Okay, I'm going to maybe stop sharing and reshare. Okay, no. Yes, things are moving forward. Okay, another thing we do is, I showed you where we have our brewery in Portland, our brewery in Bend, brewery in Roanoke. We get together every other week and send samples to each other and have like a project assessment meeting. And this is where we sit down with procurement, with quality, with marketing, and talk over and taste the beers and see, okay, this is a direction that we want to keep. This is a direction that we're going to move away from. It's my favorite meeting ever. And sadly, during the pandemic, we had to pare this down a lot. So that's one thing I'm looking forward to, getting us all back in the room and having these, 12 sample meetings where we get to be much more collaborative in the same room. All right, so when I tell people what I do, they think I'm like, in a lab making these crazy concoctions, but really I'm ultimately responsible for the product plan, which starts with a delicious beer. And, you can't underestimate what an amazing name does. And for us, it has to check all these boxes, not in use, right? Like, shout out to all the breweries out there that are actually putting effort into naming beers that don't disrespect or appropriate. Describe the experience, an easy bar call. Gosh, if it could be funny, that's amazing. So a name can sometimes really trip folks up, trips us up sometimes for sure. But onward, right? You have your beer, your name, then looking at the awesome ingredients, preliminary costing, and getting sales data from your pubs. Beer Law, HQ, also getting clearance from the name from legal. Thanks for that. Yes, an important part of that naming process. The more you can do that up front, the more headaches you keep yourselves from. Getting into logistics. So for us, again, going back to your journey, you might be in a different part of the journey, but for us, we are heavy into chain retail. And so we have 2 times of the year where we are like razor focused on hitting these dates. So March and August, these apply to the retail chain resets. And so every March, that's the sell-in period for fall. So for us in product development, we want products ready by March with a great plan so our sales team can sell in those products for fall. That's also the spring, the launch for new products that you sold in last August. So again, in August, then that's the sell-in period for spring, and then any new products that were sold in March. So once you have those 2 time periods, after that, it's really just project management. You have a deadline, and with project management, it is important to have a project manager. So there's Sean Elliott. He's one of our logistics project managers. He's our supply chain analyst, so sees a lot of the process. But we lean on him on a week-to-week basis to set a status check-in and keep the process going with clear roles and responsibilities. So you don't need anything fancy. You're not supposed to read this. This is just to show you how you can set up even just an Excel worksheet. It works just fine. Just have your project, your production dates, when you need to ship, backdated, and when you need packaging in-house, when you need to brew, get some details on the pack types, and then everyone's key tasks and deadlines. We've gone through a ton of different iterations on like task management for this. And honestly, we've come all the way back around into Excel, because when you're managing 40 to 60 projects per year, Excel just has, it's one place to see where things are red. If you have some cells there that can tell you with conditional formatting that, you're off track. So, it's still possible to use things like some task lists and reminders, but like I said, Excel has worked great for us, so we continue to use that. Within the team, having a bi-weekly check-in where we say, hey, marketing, where's the art on this? Where are we on a regulatory standpoint? If you have the trademark, that sort of thing. Where are we with forecasting? Have we gotten some preliminary data from sales where we can start, getting these numbers in front of procurement so they can start buying things, getting packaging, all through the process, through TTB, all those approvals that have to happen, getting it into production planning. When can we actually put this on a schedule? What's the size of brew? All those details. And then quality specs. So if there's anything unique to that product, I talked about some of the, lower calorie beers that we might have needed to do some early tests in order to comply with any regulatory needs and specifications on the label. So this is a place to check through, have all the players in the room, and have a check-in meeting. One tool that we have utilized is through Microsoft Teams and Planner. As I mentioned, this could be used for some task management. I think if it works for people, great. Different people like to deal with their task management in a different way. But like I said, Excel, nothing's really been better than that. So getting into go-to-market planning. So just an overall snapshot of what this is, it's taking that strategic plan, like your portfolio that is laddering up to your strategic plan and getting a sense of the market. From there, the product brief. So again, that's what I'm responsible at the brewery. So knowing who your target customer is, what's the value proposition of that product, what SKUs are you going to come out with, what's the competitive set, who are your competitors, where you fit within them, and then just getting an overall assessment of financials. The marketing plan comes in on looking at packaging assets first and foremost, then looking at supporting through campaign, social media, what point of sale do you have, and then how are you going to communicate both internally, or externally. And then finally, getting all that together to build a sales plan. So what are the launch goals? Where are you going to launch? What channels, what geographies, what forecasts do we need to put together? What are the display standards if they're unique to this brand? And then how do you align them with the goals of your distributors? Again, thinking of the different customers in your value chain. Overall, go-to-market strategy is just a battle plan, right? So you want to communicate internally first and foremost. So you have your internal team, your sales team all aligned on why are we making this product? How does it fit into our portfolio? Who's the customer? Within that value proposition, think of all three tiers. So not only is this beer, you know, a new IPA, focusing on the new experimental variety 630 and new hopping techniques, as in Haze-tron. But for a retailer, that might not be the value. To them, they might want to know about basket ring and how it could relate to the other products in your portfolio. So using different language within you know, that value proposition within different customers. And then just overall, like, when are you going to launch? Getting people ready to receive this, sharing the marketing plan, putting together the sales plan, and then through launch, I mentioned having some set times, 60 and 120 are the timelines we tend to use for post-launch review and getting some lessons learned. So I mentioned we just launched Squeezy Rider, and I found this ready to chill, and it kind of cracked me up because it really does relate to, you know, your launch. If you put a good launch plan together, launch should be the most quiet part of the whole deal. You should be able to chill during launch if you put all that time into testing and all of that, and you have that set process. Launch should be pretty quiet. It's actually kind of sad. Like I say this a lot, where I think we should, you know, party more during launch time, and I think we'll get to it on the other side of this pandemic. But it is usually pretty quiet because we're typically on to the next thing. And as I mentioned, post-launch is not where it should end. So another place to get data from your sales team first and foremost is to survey them and asking them, how is the beer quality? What are you hearing from the field? Were we prepared for you with selling materials that made you feel confident? Did we launch at the correct time? Did we set the right goals? What are some lessons learned? So those are just some examples of questions that will put together kind of a good lessons learned after a post product launch. And you could pair that with sales data to really see how did we do overall. Yeah, so the ultimate goal here, right, is to get a strong beer calendar, a strong portfolio. Again, through the lens of that fresh family, this is what we're focusing on, while keeping our heritage or classic brands still fresh with some retro branding and that sort of thing. Getting some, you know, question marks out there on seeing these lifestyle brands and having a good plan for the future on what we want our portfolio to look like. So this might seem like a lot of process, but I firmly believe that with set process and set responsibilities, that allows the product development team to remain creative and flexible, because you all know, you work at a brewery, shit is always changing. It's super dynamic. Lots of things come up. There's always fires to fight. So the more places that you can have set process, that allows for a little bit more creativity, because you're not totally fighting fires every single day. Some things are just clicking along with a process with a responsible person. So I really do think that by putting some effort into creating a process that works for you and your brewery, wherever you are in your journey, that will allow you to be continually more creative and flexible. So I will, if there are questions, I'll keep an eye on the chat here, but I want to thank you all so much for having me. Thanks for tuning in and letting me know where you logged in from. And there's my email if you have questions on anything I talked about, anything product development related, recipe development, that sort of thing. I'd love to hear from you. And thank you so much.